A friend of mine died recently because none of us could remember his blood type. His last words were to remind us to be positive, but it's just so hard to move on. Well, when I made my unboxing video for the July HorrorPack, I mentioned that I'd finished watching the June offerings, so today, even though it's obviously a little bit late, our business at hand is the monthly review video. In case you're new around here, welcome, and this is a regular feature on this channel. Every month I take a few minutes to provide a review and rating of all the movies I got in the last month's package from the HorrorPack subscription service. To get the sort of bookkeeping out of the way right at the start, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. If you're interested in any of these movies I'm going to be reviewing, I've put purchase links right down there in the What's It, and if you're thinking of buying any of them, using those links is a great way to lend a helping hand to my insidious plot to use this channel to take over the world. But anyway, we've got 4 movies to review, so I suppose we should get right to that. The first one is a Nicolas Cage movie called Pig. This is the story of a truffle farmer whose truffle pig gets kidnapped, so he goes on a rescue mission. And I was all kinds of excited about this one. First of all, I'm enough of a culinary nerd to be particularly attracted to a revenge movie about a truffle pig, but I'm also enough of a Nick Cage fan to know he was going to deliver an over-the-top performance as one of his trademark weird characters. And I wasn't disappointed. It's actually a really good movie. It's a sort of toned down and understated version of the revenge movie, sort of a plot. I mean, you could compare it on some level to John Wick, but instead of violence, it's driven almost entirely by dialogue. So a way of thinking about it is like John Wick, but with words instead of bullets and a truffle pig instead of a dog. And more importantly, it's a remarkably astute send-up of the pretentiousness of the modern culinary world, which is frankly just a delight to watch. In fact, thinking of it on that level, you might consider it a good second part to a double feature, also including The Menu. If you've seen that movie, you know what I'm talking about. However, including Pig in the HorrorPack is a bit of a funny choice. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad they did, because I hadn't seen the movie and I quite enjoyed it. But it's really nothing to do with horror. In fact, if I were to assign a letter grade for Pig as a horror movie, I think I'd have to give it a D. Not quite an F, because my twisted mind can warp just about anything into a horror plot, but this one just doesn't really give me a lot to work with as horror. But I'm not going to rate it specifically as a horror movie. That may be my favorite genre, and it's certainly the genre we talk about on this channel, but it's never been the only genre I read or watch, so I'm perfectly happy to watch something like this from another genre. And so, just as a movie, not necessarily a horror movie, I'll give this one a highly respectable A-. And don't think that's too harsh a criticism, because I tend not to give A to A+ except to very close to perfect films. Next up was The Call. And here I have to pause to make a small constructive criticism of the HorrorPack, because I knew I'd seen this movie before, and I sort of had an inkling that it might have been in a prior HorrorPack, and it was. It wasn't in the Blu-ray pack, so it's technically not a duplication, but The Call was included in the May 2022 DVD HorrorPack. For new people, there used to be both a DVD and a Blu-ray HorrorPack option, and now there's just the Blu-ray option. Anyway, that's why it seemed familiar to me when I opened it up and saw the cover. I got it a couple years ago in the DVD pack. And I'm not complaining too much because it has been more than 2 years, and it was the other HorrorPack. Still, just a slight But as for the movie itself, it's about these kids who are summoned to the house of this creepy old lady they've accused of murder. She's died, and her husband explains that they stand to inherit her entire estate despite their ill treatment of her, but only on the condition they each complete a phone call. But not a phone call to her lawyer or to the police or anything like that. No, she's been buried with a phone and intends to speak to them from beyond the grave. And it's actually a pretty good movie, though most of the individual scares aren't particularly original. The overall premise is, and it's delivered masterfully. Tobin Bell and Lynn Shay really steal the show, but the kids turned in good performances as well, and it's on the basis of those performances that I give this one also a grade of A-. That's followed by Blood from the Mummy's Tomb. It wasn't one I'd seen before, but once I watched it, I looked into its history a bit, and I have to say, if you want to talk about cursed film productions, this one really needs to be in that conversation. Originally, they'd cast Peter Cushing, who walked away after shooting for only 1 day because of his wife's illness. Fair enough, but they had to recast. Worse, the director died of a heart attack on set several weeks into the shoot and had to be replaced at the last minute. So it's kind of a miracle that this movie exists at all. And when you look at it with its production in mind, it's actually kind of miraculous it turned out as good as it did. That's not to say it's the best movie ever or anything like that. It's a pretty stereotypical, somewhat cheesy 70s horror movie, but it's actually really well put together. It's well shot, well performed, and has a decent, if not entirely original script. I'll give this one a B-. And that leaves us with the HorrorPack exclusive. This is exclusive number 96, and it's called The Girl Who Cried Her Eyes Out. It's a low-budget indie film about a group of friends on a camping trip who end up squaring off against the vengeful spirit of a young girl who, quite literally, cried her eyes out. What I think is remarkable about this one is that it manages to take a pretty stereotypical group of kids in the woods kind of a plot, combine it with a pretty stereotypical ghost story, and give us something more original than I expected by combining those two things together. It's one of those that's clearly low budget, but worked entirely within its means and gave us something I liked quite a lot. I'll give this one a B+. So, all in all, I'd say this was a pretty successful month for HorrorPack. Do be sure to subscribe and stick around for my next spooky video. And until then, take care and stay scared.